So I want to level set first a little bit about open source software. Open source software today, by numerous different studies, is consumed by about 98% of the software products that are out there. An average app, a phone, a car, websites you go and visit, and in fact, 70 to 90% by lines of code within those objects tend to be pre-existing open source code. So open source is kind of in this 30-year trajectory. 98 was when it was defined, but really we were building the internet using open source code. Has come from the kind of, rebel, kind of outsider, kind of let's keep the internet free and fair, to becoming the new establishment, right? But it's always stood for me at least, for two-word phrases that I think are particularly relevant in this conversation about AI. The first is personal agency, right? And the second is collective action. So the personal agency bit. Now, this might not be relevant to most of you who are not necessarily programmers, but when you're setting up a website and you're using WordPress and you find a bug in it, if you're a developer, you can fix that bug. If you're using somebody's commercial software, you might be able to file a bug report and hope that they pay attention to it, but you're not paying them, so good luck, all right? That personal agency gives you the ability, again, not just to fix that bug, but to add a feature, to improve it, to change its behavior. Now, what's one of the big problems we have in AI is this sense that there isn't a sense of agency over the software, right? That we are consumers of it, but we're not necessarily even aware of what its training set is or what it's doing, let alone have a sense of control over it. The second is collective action, right? And the collective action, because of the first thing, is voluntary. And the cool thing about that is, Pete and you and I can agree to collaborate on a thing and build something cool, and then if one of us has a different idea and I can't sell the other two of you on it, I can find other people to work on it. I don't have to throw away what we've built to go work on something else. So this vibrant back and forth that happens in every scientific field, particularly young scientific fields like this one, can manifest itself very directly into shipping software, rather than having to stay in the realm of academic debates that hopefully somebody resolves one day. So how do I translate this now? So what's going on first off, all of the software that is used to build models, generally speaking, within an order of magnitude, all the software is pre-existing open source code. It's PyTorch, it's Spark to handle large volumes of incoming data. It's all sorts of tools that those of you building startups are benefiting from because they're on the ground there, you're able to pick them up and use them. The harder access has been to data sets, training sets, but the good news there is because of this vibrancy of the open source ecosystem around AI, it's gotten cheaper to build models. The trend line for that is much faster than Moore's Law. In fact, the Stanford Llama model apparently costs about $600 to train something that's at the level of GPT-3. Now, that's a claim they've made. I know there's debate, but this stuff is getting better faster. Also, thanks to open source code, we've moved away from needing all of the data there at once to build one big model and towards a more modular approach where you can pick up a pre-existing foundational model, add to it other models that you've built. So this kind of combinatorics of models gives us a bunch of options and gives us a bunch of efficiency we didn't have before. And the big picture here is to that personal agency question. It allows you to start to think about not just what might it mean to not have to build a startup based on API calls into OpenAI, but to build a startup based on building your own models, working from the training sets, benefiting from this rich open source ecosystem, but having that agency as a startup or as a mid-sized company. But if we see the trend lines continue in a few years, the idea of personal AIs can start to get much more pragmatic. I'm not going to send my 30 years of collected email outbox archives off to Sam Altman. Sam, no offense if you're here. I'm going to train a personal AI on it so that it helps me write my emails to people I've known for a long time or have just met, right? This personal AI is how we get to trust. It's how we deal with some of the issues people have been concerned about out there. But I think it actually deals with what I'd call not a direct risk like amongst the 10 we listed there, but a meta risk. That meta risk being all of those challenges are challenges of power and imbalances of power, right? And you can verify this yourself by replacing the word AI with bad people with AI or powerful people with AI, and you'll get the same result. AI by itself as a technology is not comparable to nuclear or bioweapons. It's comparable to any other kind of information technology that has amplified how we work out there. And the right approach to addressing those harms, to addressing those concerns, I believe, and I think a lot of others share this, is to equalize access to that AI. In fact, I heard a couple people touch on this as well. Open source software is a pathway to do that. Collective action by the developers working on collective models and building upon each other's work is the right way to do that. And even if you're concerned about bias or about other kind of things that are reflective of harms embedded within these models, well, building your own, in fact, government regulators, instead of saying, here's a list of rules for detecting bias, could say, here's a model that you can plug into your AI systems that will tell you when something you've generated is biased. So this is a trend line, this is the trajectory. I think there's these meta risks. There's a second meta risk I'm blanking on, is really more about an othering of AI, pretending AI is more like an actor with agency rather than, and something to blame when things go wrong, rather than realizing there's people behind it. Again, open source software has really always been about the people behind the code, and if we retain that, I think we can address a lot of those risks, again, echoing much of what has been said. The European Union views themselves as the Silicon Valley of regulation. I had that said three times by 3 different MEPs when I visited them earlier this month, which is a little absurd, but they're very proud of the GDPR, and I just have to say, it's adorable. But one of the challenges, their view is more of the precautionary principle. If you don't understand a thing, then we have to wait until we figure out what its ramifications are before we can permit it. That's going to throttle the European artificial intelligence scene. It's going to throttle the ability to use AI to fight AI harms, and that presents its whole world of risks. The Chinese are a little bit at the opposite extreme. And first off, I want to say, don't think of China as a monolith. The interests of the government, even that is 2 or 3 different groups. The interests of the companies are definitely different. Alibaba, by the way, found the open source bug in Apache Log4j that became a big deal a year and a half ago, and they reported it appropriately, like they want to engage. 15% or so of investment into the public open source community comes from contributors in China. And they've been massive consumers, a lot of the AI software and models out there. They're all in. They're hoping somebody, puts the pause button in the West so that they can move further faster. They see the same trend lines that are less worried about the lack of access to NVIDIA chips than others. The thing to think about, though, is they can also be allies of ours in the fight against AI harms. While there are things we might not like, it's very easy to try to keep an AI model from outputting the word democracy. It's going to be a lot harder, frankly, to keep these tools from actually being tools of liberation if we agree to work with them on this stuff. So that's how I'd like to wrap it up, I guess. And I'm really, even though there's big risks out there, I'm really eager to use technology to fight those risks, and I hope all the rest of you are too. Thank you.